Okay, it seems that we're finally live. We're live again at one more episode of Dojo Live. We're broadcasting from the offices here of Nearstuff in Hermosillo. And today we're going to be featuring David Spark. David Spark is well, he's a man with many hats, I'd say, and he's a business tech content marketing professional, influence marketer, author, and a whole bunch of other things. But I'm going to let David do the talking and introduce an introduction of himself. So, and also before we go on any further, I'd like to also thank my teammate Luis Dario Davila, who's going to be co-hosting today's broadcast. Thank you, Dario, for your willingness to be here today. Dario is part of yes, absolutely, our pleasure. Today, Dario is a part of the marketing team here at Nearstuff. All right, so let's go back to you, David. David, well, there's a lot that we can say about your expertise and a lot of interesting and definitely fun stuff that you have shared with us today. But I'd like to ask you, and we'll start this conversation by asking you specifically about the topic of today, which is 3 feet from 7 figures. That's the title of your book, I believe. So would you care to elaborate a little bit about what this is and how it's relevant to the marketing realm? The mic's all yours.
Sure. So what this refers to, the title of my book, 3 feet from 7 figures, where I can hold up a copy of it right here. There it is. Perfect. 3 feet from 7 figures. Mm-hmm. What this title refers to is when you work at a trade show or a conference, your physical proximity to potential customers is often just 3 feet away. You're extremely close to them. And if you were to land one of these people, and if you work in a sort of B2B type establishment, and you're working in a B2B industry trade show, if you were to land one of these people as a customer, their inevitable lifetime value would probably run into the 7 figures. And hence hence the title, 3 feet from 7 figures. You're this close to that much, and if you understood that and you recognize that, you would probably be more aggressive about how you engage with people. So the subtitle of the book is One-on-One Engagement Techniques to Qualify More Leads at Trade Shows. So that's what it is. It just sort of offers up some tips and techniques on how do I stop this random person walking by. I'm standing in the booth, or I could be just an attendee at a trade show. A random person walks by. How do I stop them? How do I have a positive moment of engagement? And then how do I qualify that person? You may be a very interesting person, Carlos, but you may not be relevant to my business or have no interest in my business for that matter. And so I have to figure out a way to sort of end our conversation quickly and positively so I can then go talk to the next person as well. And so that's what this whole book talks about, is all those techniques and tricks to the trade to do that. And we also believe that you have to kind of build incentives to get your employees to work really, really hard, because sadly people don't all the time. So that's what the book's all about, and I feel people are learning a lot from it, and I've learned a lot when researching and writing it myself.
And I believe that also everything you're saying that you shared with us is something based on something that is called comedian-led, right?
So what we do is, specifically we have comedian-led trade show training. So the book is...
Or just something else. Oh, it's something else. Okay.
But we also offer the service. My company, Spark Media Solutions, offers trade show training because, like with this is essentially a self-help book. With any self-help book, rarely do you read it and then all of a sudden are fully able to apply everything that's in it. So we actually offer the training that sort of extends beyond the teachings within the book itself, and we offer some, real-world training, and we've had a lot of success with that. I mean, when we just started doing this, the training, our first clients tripled their expected leads at the trade show. And that's kind of the whole goal when you're working a trade show, is getting more qualified leads, qualifying the money that you're spending on a trade show, which can be exorbitant, and getting some more bang for your buck. And that's, I mean, that's the whole goal. You know, the book, the print book, costs $14.95 US dollars. My feeling is you get one qualified lead after one more after reading this book. It'll be worth it. But trust me, you'll get a lot more than that.
Absolutely, sure that's so. But
so, what did you think? You read some of the book. What did you garner from it? Is there any insights that you got? Or I hope you read some of it.
Well, there's a lot of reading to be done still. But one of the things that I can tell you right now is that as far as what it takes to motivate the people who are attending who are running, for example, a booth at a trade show. So these motivations can vary from depending on how the person or the person who's in charge of the booth is, for example. So how do you homogenize, so to speak, what you're telling them based on this wide mix of personalities? Not is have you had is there any way that someone, if I read the book but I'm not really an open person or an extrovert or something, how do you overcome those situations when you find people or readers such as this?
So that's a really good question. So yeah, not everybody is an extrovert. Not everybody is prepared for what is necessary to engage with people at a trade show or a conference. That's why we actually kind of have when we do our training, we have a kind of a three-part level, and we talk about this in the book. Training is one thing, but you also have to incentivize. But then the first thing is you have to audition people. So often trade show work is seen as a punishment. Carlos, you're going to have to go to this city, and you're going to have to stand in this booth for 8 hours. You can't leave this 10-foot by 10-foot or 10-foot by 20-foot booth for 8 hours, and you just have to stay there all day. And everyone else is going off to, there's a mixer over here, and there's a session over here that's interesting, and there's all this cool stuff going on, but you have to stay in the booth. And it sounds like a punishment. It sounds awful. So what you have to do is you have to audition people and make them feel like they're winning a prize if they do this. That it's not a punishment. It's something, and then so that's the first thing. But the second is, sometimes you're going to have introverts because you need certain expertise working the booth. There's certain people in your company that have certain knowledge that are going to be introverts, and you need them physically at the show because of their knowledge that they hold. You can train them to a degree. You're not going to change somebody's personality, but you can train them some really, really basic techniques. I mean, one crazy basic technique that everyone can use and yet nobody does is just read people's names off of their name tags. They're wearing their name around their neck. I mean, the first way to get someone's attention is look at their name and say, "Hey, Carlos." People actually respond when they hear their name, and their first reaction is usually like first of all, I've done this so many times, and this since we're doing a video podcast, I can do this visually for you. So I'm going to have you we'll do a little role playing. Carlos, just say, "Hey, David."
Hey, David.
Do I know you? Happens every time. So there's this look of, wait, how do I know? And then a funny line that my lead trainer came up with is, "Oh no, no, David. See, I have magical powers. I can read minds, and I also can read name tags." And then that's when they realize, "Oh my God, my name's hanging around my neck." And not everybody is aware of that fact.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. It has happened to me at certain events that I'm wearing a name tag I'm tagged with my name on it. Yeah. But I myself, sometimes I even forget that I'm wearing it. So when the person approaches me and he tells me, it's like, "Hey, Carlos," and I go, "Yeah, exactly. That's the same reaction." It's like
everyone thinks. First of all,
each other.
In our normal conversation, our normal going about, if you're at any kind of event, and someone says your name, you assume the person who said your name knows you.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, that's the assumption. So it's just, it's a bizarre response. That's why everyone reacts like that. It's just funny, and you kind of play off of that. But what's so bizarre to me is there's a tool hanging around everybody's neck, which is their name, that you can take advantage of to have that moment of engagement. If you want that person to stop, just say their name. That's the first thing you do, and I'm surprised how few people take advantage of it. Just say it. Now, it is sometimes hard because the print is sometimes tiny, and they're 20 feet away, and hopefully you've got a good enough vision you'll be able to read it. That's why I'm always a big fan of the trade shows that print the names enormous on the badge. Some do.
Absolutely. Okay. I'd like to ask Dario. Dario, I'd like to pass on the mic to you. So, do you have any questions for David, or what do you think about what you're listening here in this talk?
Yeah, something that comes to my mind when David was checking about the name tags was, in this kind of events, you go and meet the people like in that instant, but how pre-work can you do to I don't know all these kinds of events have their if you are a guest, you can see everyone's guest who's going where working their companies and their industry and all kind of stuff. So what kind of work you can do previous the show to
This is a
come
really good question.
with insights to share with them, like, oh, I met you in your site or everything.
So the first thing, if you are, like you said, if you're fortunate enough to see a list of the attendees and their titles and their companies, that is monstrously powerful. So let's start with that, and then we'll go to where you have zero knowledge. So let's say you do actually have a certain level of knowledge. Well, take advantage of the company names and really look at the titles, because the titles is where you're going to sort of learn about whether they're going to be a qualified person or not. And then you also get the general idea of, oh, well, there's a lot of people in marketing, or there's a lot of people who are in engineering, and a lot of developers, or whatever it is, the type of show you're at, you kind of get the idea of it. But then again, you can just talk to the event producers and just say, hey, what's the mix of the audience? What percentage of this, this, and this? In fact, I was just talking to an event producer a few hours ago, and they actually, for sponsors, they actually list the percentage breakdown of the different industries that everybody's in, which is, if you're an event producer, I think everyone should do that. I think that's pretty powerful. Yeah. So understand, and once you understand that, then you're going to start to craft your questions based on what it is. So if I know there's a lot of developers, then we're going to craft our questions for a developer audience. If I know there's a lot of back-end engineers, we're going to qualify for that, or they're marketing people who qualify for that. So, and also know that, well, our product sells to developers, not for marketers. So if we get a marketer, we're going to have to push them off as disqualified. But it's potential a marketer is influential in the decision-making process, so you maybe not want to do that. It all depends on your business, so that's it. But the second step, and this can be done even if you have zero knowledge, but if you have some knowledge and you know the type of audience you've got, start crafting opening lines. Now, there's some universal ones, and I'll give those up, but craft opening lines. And some of the universal ones is, what kind of solutions are you looking for at the show today? Or, looking at somebody's name, hey, what do you do at IBM? Kind of a thing. Or I see that you're an engineer. What are you working on in it? So ask them questions about themselves. But one of my favorite universal questions to ask, and this you don't even have to prepare for, this is something you could just do on the spot, is just ask people what's the coolest thing you've seen at the show so far. And that has a really powerful impact in the sense that by asking that question, what's the coolest thing you've seen, you're not selling, you're not saying, hey, pay attention to me. You're asking, hey, I want your opinion, Carlos Luis. I want your opinions. And then the second is the way that person answers will lead you down the road of whether they're qualified or disqualified for your business. And then lastly, by everyone telling you what's the coolest or most interesting thing you've seen, since you're trapped in this booth for 8 hours, more or less, you're starting to get information about the show, so it's actually educating you in the same process. So those are some things you can do in preparation, but definitely craft just a handful of opening lines and just have those like kind of in your quiver for when you're standing there and you're ready to talk to people on the show floor. And try to make them as specific to your industry as possible if you can.
Yeah, and also you mentioned something that I found very important, that is not come and sell right away. Oh, I don't know how you guys did, but I think it's really bad because if something arrives and just starts selling at me, it's going to be like a fierce barrier just because he's selling to me.
You know,
So
that's sales 101. I mean, you know, what you just, I mean, I'm not even a professional salesman, but, you know, the good salesman knows the way to win a sale is to talk about the person and get the person to like you, not to sell the company the product. Just, because people are selling to people, most of the time, except, when you're buying a can of soda, most often when we're selling big higher level things, like when Nearsoft is selling its product, which is, your amazing development teams, it's a person who sold to another person. Somebody had to like this individual person to be able to do, and like your team and meet your team and things like that. So that's very important in that process. But and that's a tough thing. A lot of people don't understand it. It's like a trade show is all about the attendee. It's not about you. And if you can sort of change your focus on that, then you'll be a lot more successful.
yeah, totally. Yeah, something else I want to ask you, David. I believe our quorum, our audience is going to be very interested. And you mentioned a little bit in the first part of your book are the don'ts and the do's about trade shows. Like, for example, you mentioned don't be on your cell phone, don't be talking only with your coworkers or using your computer. Like, hey, like, hey, you're closed, you can enter here. So, what else are those don'ts and do's?
So let me explain why these don'ts exist before I even go down that line. One of the things you have to realize when you're in a trade show booth, you're kind of in a way on a stage. You're physically projecting outwards to the aisle, to the people walking by. You're projecting. So anything you do in that booth reflects either positively or negatively on your brand. And sadly, so many people focus on the design and the direct decorations of the booth thinking that's what's going to draw them in. It doesn't. People always look at the people first in the booth, then they look at any text or design you have in the booth. So if the people's behavior is not something that's welcoming, they're not going to come in. So in a sense, you're standing on a stage that's physically live for 8 hours straight, which is a bizarre thing, especially if you're not actors, expecting that. That's the other thing. Trade shows are bizarre in general. So here's the weird thing about the don'ts, and I'll go over. The don'ts that I'm going to list are actually perfectly normal behavior. They're just not normal when you're in a trade show booth, and that's the part that's a little confusing to people. So, like what you mentioned, don't be on your cell phone. Don't be eating. Don't be drinking in the booth. Don't be in a huddle talking to your coworkers. Don't have your back to the aisle. Don't be working on your computer. Now, talking to your coworkers, working on your computer, talking on your cell phone, eating, all normal, expected. In your office, you should do that. But not on a trade show floor, what happens is people pass you. They see the behavior. They realize it's not welcoming. If this group of people are huddled, they obviously don't want me to come in. So they're not welcoming. And what happens, and this is the part that people have such a hard time understanding, is you're getting rejected before anyone talks to you. If you're sitting there staring at your cell phone, you're not welcoming, and you may be looking at your cell phone for fear of rejection, but what's happening is you are being rejected from what you're trying to get away from. And so that's a part that everyone has to kind of realize, is that if you're staring at your cell phone because you don't want to talk to people, because you don't want people to say no to you, which they will, and we can get into that, you have to realize it's happening anyways.
Yeah, it's quite funny because if you think it in a way, it's weird, like you say, to be standing in a trade show just saying hi to people, random people.
Yeah.
There's like, if you see a person in the street just standing and saying hi to people is going to be kind of weird. But and saying that, how about in what is more effective? If you're selling or you're trying to get some solutions, it's going on or having your or like going on a walk and start you asking the questions, or have your own your own place and be welcoming people. So what is better if you're
Oh, so
selling
you're
or if
talking
you
about just
are
well, so you're actually getting into there's an industry term that's called suitcasing, and I don't know
oh
if you
yeah
ever have you heard this
yeah
term?
yeah
You know
yeah
what the term is? So I was just at a trade show that had all these warning signs. Don't be suitcasing. So the first thing you kind of described is suitcasing, but it really is. I mean, look, even if you weren't sponsoring a booth, everyone's there at a trade show trying to sell themselves regardless. You know, we're all doing that, you know. But there's a term in the industry called suitcasing, which means you literally just stand in the middle of the aisles and you just try to sell your wares, and you like maybe have a laptop out or a tablet and you're showing your product and you're maybe giving away things. That scene is quote suitcasing, where you're essentially trying to get a free booth in the middle of the aisle. Um, I have never actually seen it happen, but I see all these warning signs, so it obviously must happen, and people have had their hands slapped as a result. Um, the reason people get booths, and this is kind of a big thing, this happens more in big trade shows and smaller ones especially, but big trade shows, is they have to have a presence. You have to physically be there. If you are a major company in an industry, and there's a big industry trade show every year, and you don't get a booth, so let's just say you don't get a booth, here's what happens. Your competitors get a booth, and people will come into the competitor's booth and go, hey, I see, company Z is not here. And now the competitor has free reign to define what your situation is. Well, I don't know if you've heard, company Z is not doing well right now. So you have to, often you just have to sponsor an event so you stay relevant and you don't lose. Because if you don't, then your competition can define your situation. The industry can define your situation. Everyone will notice, oh my God, they're not here. Things may not be going well for them right now. So that's often a major reason people do it. But if you're making mostly big announcements, you want to do that. If you're trying to push a product hard, your company's about to go public. I mean, there's a whole series of reasons people spend a lot of money on trade shows, for that matter.
okay. Yeah, and well, we have talked about pre-work, and the actual show work, but how about the post-work? Because
The
it's
follow-up.
yeah, the follow-up. It's happened every time you go to one of those big events, and you end up with your little bag of gifts and with a lot of introduction cards, and you're
Yeah.
looking like, oh, how is the name? What is the name of this guy that really interests my intention in this product? You see like 50 cards, and you're like, it's kind of very
So it's
disorganized that way.
where's my deck of them? Hold on, I had a deck of cards. So I was just at a trade show myself. Ah, here it is. So here's all the cards that I got.
Yeah,
From the trade
it
show.
happens every time. And so,
Yeah, so it's about 40 cards right here.
so
And,
what is the right way to do it? The follow up.
so it's interesting you mentioned. So, and by the way, I'm getting puzzled. So I'm going to say something that I'm just surprised happened. And Carlos, I want you to jump in on this. I'm very aggressive about my follow-up. So immediately the day after, I wrote more than 40 private messages to all these people. All right? Immediately banged them all out. Of the 43, it was actually 43 people. Of the 43, I would say 6 to 7 responded. And they were obviously private messages because I made specific references to our conversation. And many of them I had actually given them a copy of the book, 3 Feet from 7 Figures. Because I was speaking at this conference on this topic of this book. And I'm kind of amazed at how people, when they exchange business cards, they give you their contact information, happily, eagerly give it to you, and then they don't follow up. If anyone knows the answer of why this happens, I don't know, but it just happens all the time. Do you have a theory behind this, Carlos? Why people just they don't follow up or they don't respond to a follow up? What's your theory? They're just lazy.
Well, I think that, and I'm going to say this from my personal standpoint, is especially with younger executives and younger businessmen, there's a lot of digital tools and stuff going on. So getting the little paper thing, it's just something. It's more of a burden to carry it and store it, and so it gets lost.
Right, but like
for some people,
a situation
not for me. Not for me. It's just again, to me, a card is it's not only a card; it's a token of appreciation. Okay, it's something that they're like, as you said, they're willingly handing out their information to me. So, but as far as to why a lot of people don't follow up, it's not because they're not lazy. That's because if they're lazy. I think it's just because they're kind of their mindset is not well attuned to keeping a paper trail. That's my personal take.
That's a good way. You know, it's interesting. The one critique that I've received of this book, and I've received this one critique multiple times, is what's your advice, per the question you just asked, Luis, for follow-up? How do you advise follow-up? And, I mean, I can advise sort of techniques to speed the follow-up process. I have kind of sort of techniques to speed it up. But if people don't follow up, I mean, I can't, you know, they need to understand the importance, I think, maybe is what's sort of missing of why it's so valuable to follow up and why it's more important than the other thing you think you're going to do next. You know what I mean? Like, there's the day after the conference, and there are things you could do. You could work on Project X, or you could follow up with the people you just met at the event. Why is it more important to follow up immediately with the people you met at the event versus working on Project X? Because the window to follow up is really just that next day. I mean, you can follow up the next week, but people really forget. So you got to take advantage of. I mean, I know it's hard. I often can't do it myself. But if you can follow up within 24, 48 hours of meeting somebody, that's the ideal situation. I mean, it just is. And look, often you know, it's just pleasantry emails. You meet a person, there's nothing really to make of the conversation other than it was nice to meet you, and let's just stay in touch. Should our needs have to engage again? But often, look, there's tons of people here that are never going to engage with me again, and that's going to be fine. I mean, that's the way it is. The other thing is you can put people that you meet at a trade show and a conference, if someone hands you their card, according to, I believe, don't quote me, but according to Canned Spam, you have the right to add them to your mailing list as well. So, I mean, you can use that as advantage, but you can also remind them again when you send them an email that that's going to happen.
Absolutely. Okay. Dario, okay, just a little pause here, by the way, before we continue, Dario. I'd like to remind the viewers to send us their questions if they have any. There's a little Q&A prompt right at the very bottom, on the left-hand side of your screen of your player, and you should see a link to our Q&A prompt. So if you have any questions, send them our way. We'll read them back to David. And Q&A prompt right at the very bottom. Okay, so I'm sorry, Dario, inside of your screen player, and you should see. Hold on one second. Give me 1 second here. Let me just stop something that got for some reason like. Okay, Dario. So you and I had a conversation earlier on, right? So
yeah.
we were discussing, basically the topic of the book and so on and so forth. Now, from your standpoint, based on what David is saying, and what would you say? How would you, if you are a let's say a person not with a sales background, so to speak, okay, and you're sometimes you're even a little scared about the salesy part of the equation of being at a trade
Then
show.
don't sell. Then the answer
So what's going to happen? So do you have any pointers for
yeah,
for
like my
this type
answer
of-
is don't even bother selling. Don't bother selling. If you fear going down the route of sales, don't worry. You don't. If you can just get the person to like you, have a positive engagement, and get them to like you, that is more successful than anything else you can do. Because how many times? I mean, this has happened to me a million times. I'll meet someone, and they'll either they'll give me the big picture of their company, and I'll go, "Wow, that's great. That sounds like a fantastic product. I should get one of those." And I walk away. Am I going to get one? No, I'm never going to get one of those. But the reality is, if I have a positive engagement with the person who I really like, not only will I then continue conversing with them via email, phone, in person, who knows, whatever, but then I'll start to like them, and I'll learn more about their product, and then if they go on within the organization, learn more, but maybe they'll skip to other companies, and we'll still have a relationship in that respect. So, if you fear that, the talking to strangers, and let me get into that for a second, is just don't worry about it. People, when they're at a trade show or in this sort of what we call a beta state, they're kind of mindlessly wandering the aisles. Nobody has a destination. It's not like, all right, I'm going to go up this aisle, turn left, and then take a right. I mean, that doesn't happen at a trade show. People start at one end of the floor, and they start zigzagging all the way down until something interests them. And it could be some kind of, flashy thing that's happening in a booth, or you, as an individual, just stop out and say, "Hey, Carlos, welcome to the show." And guess what? Most people stop. But, and I will say this again, you will get a lot of rejection on trade show. I'm very, very good at stopping people at trade shows and conferences, just having positive engagement. But I still, even as good as I am at doing this, I get rejected all the time. It still happens. It happens all the time. And you can't take it personally. You can't take it. If I walk by you, Carlos, and you say, "Hey, David," and I just go, I wave my hand, and not now. Don't take that as me hating you and, attack, And that's the thing you kind of have to get over immediately, because when people reject you on a trade show floor, it's not a personal attack. It's just their mind is somewhere else, and they need to go somewhere else, and that's it. So don't, and honestly, the things I do often is I play techniques where I look at what the person is wearing often, like, if I saw you wearing that shirt, I'd say, "Hey, Carlos, what are those icons on your shirt?" And you'll stop and you go, "Oh, well, this is you'll want to show it off." Mm-hmm. Right? And, or, if you happen to be walking down the aisle with that headset on, and I could joke and I go, "Hey, are you bringing, are you landing an airplane right now or something?" It's just the thing is, I always try to take advantage of what's happening in the moment. So that often is what the person is wearing. It also could be something what you're wearing. I mean, often you'll see people wearing the same colored shirt in the booth. But I argue often, and we mentioned this in the book. Change it up. Have everyone wear sort of crazy outfits so they're ludicrous. Like, you could wear a ludicrously crazy tie, and your opening line could be, "What do you think of this tie?" I mean, that could be it. Or you could be wearing bunny ears on your head and say, "Hey, you like my ears?" And it gives a person a reason for someone to stop and have a positive engagement. Again, your first goal is just to get the person to stop and engage with you. Your second goal is to then figure out if they're qualified or not. So it could be a situation of just saying, "Hey, is this right for you? Is this, are you in this kind of industry? Are you worried about security?" And we also play the game of yes, which this is a classic sales technique. You could ask, I'll ask you, Luis, are you concerned about security at your company?
Yes.
Okay. And would you like to, maybe be less concerned and not less, stressing a little bit less about security at your company? You go,
yeah, totally.
And if I gave you, if there was like a kind of a platform, like maybe a dashboard where you could see the current state of your security, do you think that would make you feel a little bit more comfortable about your situation?
Yeah, totally.
All right. So now I did this sort of game of 3 yeses, which is kind of a classic sales technique of asking these little small questions which you know you'll get a yes answer to. He goes, well, then I need to help you, Luis, because I need to show you something that's going to solve your problem. And that's a really good technique to do. So you can kind of use that. And that's, talking about how do you pre-plan. Well, have your series of yes questions beforehand. We also a big fan of like coming up with gimmicks. One thing that I mentioned in the book, there was a company that helped with check fraud, that there were fraudulent checks, and to them a qualified customer was someone who believed that check fraud was a $500,000 problem, or it's not $500 billion problem. And so now, if I didn't add a gimmick, I could just literally stop random people walking by. Hey, do you think check fraud's a $500 million problem? No, you're not qualified. Do you think Well, that's not engagement. That's So what they did was they had people standing on the edge of the booth with actual checks, and they would stop people and say, "Hey, Luis, come by here a second. Do you think this check is fraudulent? Is this a forged check?" And you look at it and you say, "Yes, no." And then like if you get it right, say, "Oh, you win a prize or whatever, whatever." But then I would ask, "So, are you concerned with check fraud?" You'd say, "Yes." And he goes, "Do you think it's a $500 million problem?" "Yes, you do believe it." "Oh my God, boom, you're qualified. Now I need to send you to this person, or I need to scan your badge." If you're not qualified, I'd say, "Hey, Luis, well, you should just know our company's responsible for check fraud. Thank you so much for coming to our booth. Why don't you drop your business card in the bowl? We're having a big raffle," kind of thing. So even if, like, right there, that's a situation you're not qualified. Even if you're not qualified, I have to make it a positive engagement. I can't say, "Oh, you don't think it's a $500 million problem? Well, get out of the way. You're not useful to me." Like, well, then you're going to tell somebody else, "Don't go to that booth. That guy's a jackass." So I have to make it a positive experience for you, even though you're not a qualified customer, because you will inevitably talk to other people on the show floor, and I need to make the experience positive for you, even if you'll never work with us.
Yeah, maybe you can bounce in the question that what is the more interesting thing you found in the expo? Like, oh, I found this fraudulent check company, and they make me a really cool
There you
experiment.
go, exactly.
Like that. Then you close again.
Something like that conference, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, you have to stay positive. The other thing is, and if you've never worked a trade show before, let me prepare you. It's friggin' exhausting.
Yeah.
You should literally be dripping with sweat at the end of it. I mean, it's just standing on your feet, talking with people. It's mentally and physically exhausting, and it's not for everybody. Like, what you said, it's not just introverts, just people who can't handle the physical and emotional stress of it. It just takes time. And some people kind of have the energy and have the wherewithal and kind of have that sort of bubbly personality, and they're perfect for it. And when we do our training, part of our process is we talk to people and we say, we train the people, and then we meet with the higher ups of the company, and we say, the training went well, and these are the people who are the rock stars of your company. You definitely want them working the booth. These people, I don't think they're necessarily going to work that well because they just don't have it. So that's what we recommend to our clients. We suggest it for them as well.
Yeah, it is really different when you are making interviews like the content you created for us in the CES, or it's more difficult to be like, "Hey, hi, I'm recording you right now," and I start an interview right away, or it's more easy because they can totally know right away what are you doing, and they can say right away if they don't want to make an interview or not. Oh, how is your approach in those kind of situations that you're creating content?
Yeah, so switching gears, for the audience that doesn't know, I've actually done some work with Nearsoft and I produced a bunch of videos with them. In those situations, almost everybody I interviewed, except for the sort of the fun man on the street style video, those people had all presented, had gotten up and done a presentation, and I interviewed them after their presentations, for that matter, most of the people. And so I knew what they had talked about, and because they presented, they're eager for any kind of exposure possible. So everyone said yes to an interview. sometimes people say no to interviews just because either they're too shy in front of a camera, or they sometimes their communications department says talk to no press. I can tell you Amazon has that policy. I don't know if it still holds. Actually, it probably doesn't, because I was just at an Amazon conference and I interviewed a few Amazon people. Maybe they don't have that policy at their own conference. Yeah, I mean, again, if people say no to you, don't take it personally. That's it. And it's a numbers game. You just got to keep hounding, keep pounding and going into, and take short breaks, take short 10, 15-minute breaks, because it is exhausting. You need to sort of relax physically and emotionally, and then just jump back into it as well.
Okay. So I have this question to someone in my campus in Querétaro made me, that, like, what is your technique to, because it's happened to me a lot when I go to these kinds of events. I'm talking with someone that give me or talk about his solution, and I go to another booth and there's other people that need that solution. That I just met the right guy. So I'm like, try to remember the name, and I'm awful remember names. So I would change them and all kind of stuff. So do you have any kind of I don't know, technique or
to remember the names of the company?
Yeah, to remember the names.
If you're holding a cell phone in your hand, just take a photo of the booth, and that'll solve your problem. It's honestly, it's a variation of the technique by my wife, Tommy. If you're ever in an enormous parking garage, and you park your car and you have no idea where the hell you left it, take a photo of your car, and the sometimes they have letters or something that mention where your car is parked, and then you just look. If you completely forget, then you know where your car is parked after the fact.
Yeah, but if you try to remember a person's name, like, hey, say hi, I wanted to remember your name, and the snap picture is going to be a little bit.
It's interesting you mention that. So that's something I exactly did. I did that where, and this happens often. You'll go to a trade show, and people won't have a business card, which I don't comprehend, but it happens. I pulled out my cell phone and just shot a 15-second video of them, like going, oh, all right, so here's Carlos, and he works for Nearsoft. I would take a shot of their badge, and I interview them, and Carlos, just tell me your email address and your phone number on camera. Boom, done. So that was one way when I didn't do. And you might want to do that because, when you get back and you have this stack of business cards, you're like, all right, this guy... Hold on, Greg. Oh, who is the Greg guy? Now I can't. Who is that guy? I can't remember who he was. So that's another reason to do it 24 hours, because everyone's name is fresh in your memory. But I'm also a big fan of why I like business cards is I write little notes on them. But you could do it with video too. I mean that's really fast and easy.
Nice. That's.
And it's also more memorable. More people will remember you. Oh, you're the guy who shot the video of me just saying my name.
Yeah, totally. It's really well. I don't know, Carlos. How are we in time? How much is left? Or
yeah, we still have a few minutes left. We have 15 minutes left.
Okay.
And I'd like to, before we run out of time, this is just part of the curiosity thing that I have about David's experience. David, you mentioned here on the 3feetbook.com website that you, let me see, sorry, but I'm nearsighted, by the way, so that's why I have to.
It's all right. By the way, for the audience listening, unfortunately, I don't have a lower third for you to see because it's not working, but 3feetbook.com. If you go to 3feetbook.com, that's where you can pick up this book. And you can get it in digital versions, which is cheaper. So it's only $10 in digital and $14.95 in print. That's US dollars. Go ahead. Carlos.
Absolutely. No, what I was going to say is that you mentioned that you yourself have quite a bit of experience in running a booth at trade shows. So, when you go to a trade show and set up a booth, what do you offer? What is your offer? What do you sell? Services? Your books?
Well, actually, honestly, I don't set up booths at trade shows, but I've worked booths. I've worked many booths at trade shows before.
Okay.
And I'm usually doing it on the behalf of another company. It's not usually my company that's actually it's never my company for that matter. Honestly, I'm just, and also when we do the training, sometimes we do it live in the booth, like while the event's going on. We're like kind of helping people.
Mm-hmm.
we're just trying to teach people to figure out how to have that a positive opening moment. I mean, honestly, that's all it is. People are aimless. People are looking for connections to another warm human being, and you can be that. I mean, that's simply it is. They just want to connect to another human being. Honestly, people don't go to a trade show to look at the cool booths and collect, little, swag and T-shirts and things like that. They go for a reason for their industry. Now, what I'm always amazed by is how people will waste all their time just collecting the garbage. And I'm like, didn't you spend a fortune to come to this conference and to pay for this conference? And this is how you're using your time? I'm always kind of amazed by that. But they do. No, but that's what people are looking for, positive conversations. And if you just think that, how can I give this person a positive conversation so their experience with me is memorable and they want to have another conversation? Because in almost all cases, the point of a trade show is just to gather leads. Very rarely are companies selling at the trade show. They're solely just gathering leads. So at the point to have the next conversation. So if I have a positive experience where you want to have another conversation with me, then that's a success, and that's the best success you can have.
So, in other words, what you're saying is that a trade show booth, running a trade show booth, could be compared to what is known in sales as Sales 2.0 or consultative sales, where you actually don't look to necessarily sell something, I mean, right there on the spot, but you are looking towards building a relationship long term.
Yeah, did you ever see? There's an old movie with oh geez, I can't remember who's in it. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking like Richard Dreyfuss and Danny DeVito, I think. But it's called Tin Men. Did you ever see that? I think it's a Barry Levinson film. Did you ever see the movie Tin Men? It's a good movie. It's about a bunch of guys who are aluminum siding salesmen. They sell aluminum siding, which was very popular back in the '60s, and for homes. And there's a good portion of the movie where they just talk about selling, and they talk about it's not about trying to push your product, but it's just getting them, to sell yourself and getting them to trust you. And there's one gag they do in the movie. They call it the $5 or the $10 gag, where the guy who's if you're the person I'm trying to sell to, Luis, and what I'll do is I'll accidentally throw, or when you're not looking, I'll throw a $10 bill on the ground, and then I'll bend down and pick it up, and I go, well, this isn't mine, and I say, well, this must be yours, Luis. And he goes, well, it's not mine. I go, well, it's definitely not mine. It must be yours. Please have it. So now I've got your trust, and this is the gag that they talk about in the movie, and it's it's kind of a con in a way, the way they do it in the movie. But the idea kind of still permeates, which is just get the person to trust you and like you. That's your only goal. Just get them to trust you and like you, and then capture their information, however you're going to do it, whether a business card, a scam, whatever. And I always suggest take a note of it, and then what I also suggest is have a follow-up engagement. So if I say to you, Carlos, this was a great, great conversation we have. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do A, for you, I'm going to give your information to this person. They're going to send you an email. And then B, I'm going to set you up for a demo to see our product so you can walk through this, and it'll be great for you. And that's, having that and making it clear, and I'm going to do that for you. So be ready, wait for my email, you'll see it, that kind of thing. Get them ready for it, prepare for it, and hopes if you do that kind of preparation and do that you will get that response back, and you'll get that second moment of engagement, and you'll start to move the person down the sales cycle. Get them to make it clear what your follow-up is going to be, and follow up, actually do it.
Excellent, David. One more thing before we run out of time.
Sure.
Can you talk to us a little bit specifically now about the tradeshowtraining.net site and
sure. So 3feetbook.com for anyone who's watching. Right here, you can pick up your copy of the book. It will take you to all the different. You can download a sample of the book, and it'll take you to purchase all the different versions, and you can read reviews of the book as well. And there's more reviews if you go to Amazon.com. The tradeshowtraining.net, that is the site for our business, which is Trade Show Training, and like what you mentioned at the beginning, it's comedian-led, meaning there's a few other people that offer trade show training, but we try to differentiate ourselves in that all of us who do the training are comedians or former comedians, have worked as comic actors or improvisers, so we make the experience of training with us a lot of fun and silly and engaging. We also teach you how to sort of joke with people on the trade show floor. So not only is the training fun, but we'll teach you to have fun with the people at the show as well. You know, it's a hard thing. I should point out, and this is one of the things I said the last time I presented on this topic, is I know there's a need for this, learning how to engage with people at trade shows. I know there's a need for it. The other thing is I know there's no demand for it at the same time. And it's an odd thing to try to start a business where there's a need but no demand. And the reason there's no demand is people don't think they're bad at this. People think when they're huddling and talking to their coworkers that they're doing a normal thing because it's what they do at the office, or they're staring at their cell phone. They don't realize how bad that behavior is. And they don't realize that just staying in the booth and not engaging with people is bad behavior too. And they think, well, heck, I know how to talk to people. I'm a salesman. I talk to people all the time. But even salesmen are very bad at this. In fact, I think they're disincentivized to work a booth because their job is to follow up on leads, not gather the initial leads. So, what I say to the people who think they don't need something like this, make a small investment in the book, read it, and realize you will need something like this and how much more value this can provide to you. We're seeing big trade shows and events. We've already gotten 3, 4. I think we're up to 4. We just released this a while ago, but we have 4 bulk orders of the book from event producers who are going to give the book out to their sponsors because the sponsors want to improve their rate of return, get more bang for their buck, and if that happens with the sponsor, then they'll want to come back and sponsor the event again and again. They want to make the experience as good as possible for the sponsors, because if it's bad for the sponsors, they won't come back and the event will fall apart. So that's a really important thing to remember, is that everyone's experience has to be better. By the way, if anyone who's watching this is an event producer and you want to do that again, you want to buy bulk copies, contact me directly. I'll get you a better deal than Amazon.
There you have it. That's a good
one. You want to buy a bunch of copies.
Absolutely. Okay, Dario, anything else before we wrap up?
No.
Hey, I appreciate the time with you guys. It was a lot of fun. I do.
Yeah, as I was just gonna say, thank you a lot for all the insights and all the advice. Yeah, it was really, really nice. It probably going to happen again because it's completely. Yeah, I'm totally open to keep working with you next year if it's a possibility. And Justin and C keeps creating content and all kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Right. So there you have it.
All right, Carlos,
okay. Well,
thank you so much for
David,
your time.
No, that's okay. David, I really, really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart that you have your acceptance of being here and being part of this. It's still an incipient initiative, but growing at the same time. And you're part of this craziness that we call DojoLIVE, which we have a lot of fun doing it. And hopefully next year is going to be bigger and bigger. So, and I'm very, very fortunate and glad that you were part of this. So, thank you again, David. Thank you, Dario. And I'll see you next time. And you guys take care. And thank you, the audience, as well. We'll be in touch. Thanks.
Okay. Well.